7th of August the 7th, 2023. And today we are commencing with our part 3, our third session in course number 123, 122, Modalities for Life. So the course introduction on your outline, it should say that the soul is compared to an unexplored continent in the Bible. Many explorers have tried to map it, including mystics, philosophers, and psychologists. Hang on, let me just switch off all my applications here. Sorry about that. And although these maps are not always accurate, they provide a rough guide to the final frontier of self-knowledge and self-mastery in Christ. So maybe we can get the first slide up on the screen. In modalities training, we use current methods and algorithms of the human psyche, but we don't let them get in the way. We are indebted to pioneers like Freud and Jung, but we acknowledge that their findings, like ours, are tentative at best. We are pioneers in the 7 archetypes of excellence, but we recognize that the soul is far more expansive than we once thought. Columbus discovered the Americas while searching for India. So I don't know what you are searching for and how did you get onto this channel, but if you're here and if you're here for the first time, welcome. And if you are coming in for session 3, today is Monday, 7th August. So we'll be covering parakaleo, metadidomy, proistomy, elios. If that sounds Greek to you, that is because it is Greek. It's from the Greek New Testament. And you're not required to know any of the biblical languages for this course, except these 7 words, or these 7 frequently occurring words in our modality vocabulary, because they capture the and really contain the biblical archetypes that are algorithms, as it says in the course description there. In modalities training, we use current methods and algorithms. Algorithm is from the computer language, but it's computer language is just derived from human ways of thinking. And human ways of thinking derive from the human psyche. As we shall see, there's a way to actually get to the heart of the human psyche. And that's really what modalities is. It's a theory of emerging leadership based on sovereign foundations, biblical archetype, and a process of discovery diagnostics. So first we have who am I sort of mystery challenge. And so what we'd like you to do is take a look at these pictures and tell me who I am. There are 7 of them. And let's go ahead and do that right now in terms of an icebreaker. Go ahead and write down in the chat box 1 to 7. 1 to 7 put numbers 1 to 7, and then let us begin. Who do you think this person is here in this strange garb? Of course, those of you who are familiar with Egyptology, or perhaps you've been to Egypt, you might recognize the headdress there, the blue and white headdress. Who do you think that is?
Pharaoh.
Nero, all right.
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. Okay. Any other guess? You can put that in. You can put that in the chat box. So thank you, Marvin. Pharaoh. These are biblical characters, sort of heroes of the faith, that you would probably find in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11. Maybe I'll give you that clue there. But you are right to say that that is an Egyptian garb there. Okay. In another session, we'll be going through biblical archaeology, and you'll be learning more about the various customs of the Egyptians. So that's the clue for the first one. What about the second one? Any ideas who this might be? Let me see if I can give you a clue there. He's a servant who's very loyal, and he goes out looking for a bride. And in fact finds the bride and brings her back on 10 camels. Okay, I won't say any more because it will be too easy. Okay, the third one is quite easy. This is a cinematographic portrayal. Of course, number 3 is a Hollywood portrayal. You've got a stick there. You've got lightning strikes at the back. Who do you think that might be? He's got a great big white beard, and he's sort of looks like there's a whole bunch of water that's being parted, or some kind of sea that's being parted there. Number 4, he's also got a stick, but he's got a different, more kindly face. Let's see, what clues can I give you about this guy? He's got a relative that he rescues from Sodom, and he's a really good talker. He really negotiates. He's able to negotiate with the Lord, and so on and so forth. Number 4, yeah, I'm talking about number 4. What about number 5? Who do you think number 5? Just put it in the chat box. Number 5. Number 5. Who in the Bible is sort of carrying a baby? This is not the New Testament. Okay, all of these characters are from the Old Testament. This is part of the section where we can find the new is in the old, concealed. So these are all Old Testament characters. But this guy, he's got a great big beard as well, and he's one of the oldest husbands that's portrayed in the Bible. But he plays a important role in the redemption of the land of belonging to Naomi's husband. Okay, I won't say any more for that. Number 6, a little bit more difficult to guess this one. I'm not sure I could guess it myself, because this is kind of showing him in his later years. As a young man, of course, he's kind of a how shall we put it, politically correct. Well, there's no way to put this one. He's a conniving fella, and he kind of steals the birthright from his brother. But anyway, number 7, of course, he's pictured here with a harp, and he's looking upward. And of course, he's the author of a whole bunch of Psalms. Yeah, so there you have it. All right. So lots of responses. Everybody's responding. Thank you very much for your responses on the chat box. This is part of the mystery challenge, and I wanted to open tonight's session by asking this question: who am I in terms of this challenge here? Who is this? But a more important question might be, or would be, how do I know? How do you know? Okay, let's try number 1. Anybody? Number 1? Your thoughts? Joseph? Okay. Okay. How do you know? How would you know that's Joseph?
Joseph, you
Um, for me, it's Joseph, like as a governor in Egypt.
Okay. So that could be.
There's
Mhm.
there's a sack in here, and that's why I said, oh, it might be Joseph.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay, quite a number of people you said Joseph. Yeah, and there's a picture here of a thumbprint, right? And it says, "Who is this?" But I think there's also a question of how do we know this is Joseph, or how do we know this is actually the person I was thinking of in number 2.
One thing more. That's why I said it's Joseph. He has a list that making a list of what they harvest.
Could be, yes. He for that reason as well. Some people see him as not in number 1 position, but number 5 position. If we follow the sequencing of Apostle Paul in Romans 12, where you have different aspects of a person's life may show certain things. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come back to this question at the end of the class and have a little discussion. If my friend is in the room, I'm not sure if Luke Lim is in the room, but anyway, if he's not, maybe he'll be coming in a little bit later. Okay, so we'll have a little discussion on how do we know, how can we tell when we're looking, and is it important for us to tell? So we began last week by looking at this anatomy of biblical genius, and remember, we began with showing you 4 different sequences of the 7 modalities, different order, and we color-coded the orders. And what we found, if you remember, what we found was that each color is contained in each pattern of 7, but in a different order. If you look at the red dot, for example, it's in a different order. Sometimes it comes first, sometimes it comes last. Same thing with all the other 7 colors. But the point is that there is this pattern, and there is something that we're noticing in terms of the gift mix that has been given, which I am calling it genius. Something that we are not something that you learn from a textbook, but rather something that you were born with. These are considered as sovereign foundations. If you remember this professor at Fuller Theological Seminary, when I was reading his book called The Making of a Leader, he highlights nationality, 4 things: nationality, where you live; language, what you know; ethnicity, what you are; religion, why you care. But there seemed to be something missing in this recipe, some ingredient that's sort of missing. And in another session, Culture Care, we're going to actually look at modalities from the aspect of a sovereign foundation. But for now, we just take it a sort of a tentative definition of modalities, a model of leadership emergence developed over time through a combination of sovereign foundations, biblical archetype, and the process of discovery diagnostics. By the way, all of this, this is sort of just a summary, executive summary of a much larger group of videos that hopefully you have already accessed on YouTube. If you do not have the links for some reason, please get back to us and we will point you in the right direction, as well as the book called Secrets of the Menorah. Okay, so we've got these 7 different components of genius, which we are saying is really not only God's gift to you, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? But also it's part of the glory of the Father. That's what we're saying. It's part of the glory. And what we've done is we've color-coded them, and we've assigned we've taken the first 3 letters, with the exception of proistemi. For proistemi, we took the ist, I-S-T. But the rest of them literally is just the first 3 letters of the Greek names, which are found in Romans chapter 12, 6, 7, and 8. And we said that we could derive their meanings by taking a look at the distinctive flavors or archetypes or traits within each. And last week we dealt with the first 3, proistemi, diakonia, and didasko. This week we're going to deal with the last 4. Okay, so we looked at the purple, the blue, and the orange. This week we're going to look at the green, the pink, the steel-colored, and the gray-colored, and the red. So that's parkleo, metadidomi, proistemi, and elios. Okay, so as we do so, what we want to look at is the distinctive flavor, number 1. Number 2, interactions with the world. How do you interact? How do you engage with the world? Number 3, how do you see the future? Number 4, how do you lead when you are in your flow? Everyone is a leader, but you lead in different styles. And then number 5, how do you solve problems? Because each one goes about it in a different way. How do you solve a problem? Or how do you learn? Number 6, how do you learn? What's your preference in terms of learning? And then number 7, what happens when you meet other people of the same modality? How do you interact with them? How do you network with them, if you do at all? And then number 8, how do you recharge? How do you restore yourself after depletion? Because when you're in your flow, of course, you can go on forever. But when you have finished what you needed to do, how do you get your energy back? How do you recharge your batteries? Different modal excellencies will do it differently, and they will have different emphasis on that. Okay, so let's recap. Let's take a quick recap from Romans 12, verses 6 to 8. We have the first 4 that we have, the first 3 actually that we did last time was PRO, which prophetia. You can see there the way that it's written there. Prophetia, diakonia, the one in blue, and didasko, the one in orange. And then what we're going to start off with today is the one in green. So if you look at the one in green, it's the first of the last 4, or the set of 4, parakleo. Parakleo is why we put it in green is because it was really enabling growth. And in the original language, it means I send for, I summon, I invite, I beseech, I entreat, I beg, I exhort, admonish, I comfort, encourage, or console. So there's a lot of nuances, but essentially it is the encourager. It is the coach. All right. So let's go into a little bit of a deep dive to this coaching component or this enabler in Exodus 40. You have this particular aspect of the tabernacle, which is the table of showbread. And of course, there are 7 pieces of furniture within the tabernacle. This just happens to be one of them. And table of showbread is a table of fresh bread. And it's the only piece of furniture that's actually is a table where God and man are supposed to sit down and have an open conversation. In 1 Corinthians 14:26, Apostle Paul talks about when you get together, someone will have a tongue. And this idea of a supernatural tongue, it's the idea of a opening up of a new conversation that you didn't have before. It's the recognition of favor that has come into your midst, something fresh, something that has come into your midst. Right. So let's continue then. Any questions so far on this? Just stop me if you do have a question. If you notice, this is the green dot, and let me just read here the main distinctive flavor, which is the ability to coach others to perform, to the finish line. The masterful conversationalist who encourages you by agreeableness, persuasion, inclusivity, and dialogue to achieve what seems impossible. Okay, this is an example. This would be the genius. In a very simple way, you could call learning the tongue. You see this Nick Vujicic, right? He has a tongue and he uses it to great. It's a sword, really. It's a sword. He doesn't have any arms. He doesn't have any legs, but his genius is in his coaching ability, whether it's to 1 or to 1,000, it doesn't matter. His intelligence is in the area, his specialty, you could say, is in the area of cultural linguistic intelligence. In fact, most stand-up comics, most negotiators, or most conversationalists, most influencers on the social media, they are highly skilled in this area, cultural linguistic intelligence. In other words, they really understand their customer. They are like salesmen, something like salesmen, okay? So when you hear Vujicic speak, you'll be laughing, rolling on the floor, laughing one moment, and then you'll be in tears, crying the next moment because he's just really so funny, okay? So the second aspect is how do they interact with the world? Well, it's from their experience, personal experience, and telling stories. All right. And then how do they see the future? Well, their future is really wrapped up in the togetherness of their circle of influence. That's how they will reposition themselves. How do they lead? They lead when there's an integration or an inclusivity of all the different colors. How do they solve problems? winsomely, swimmingly inclusive and paraclectic. Basically, they build bridges, and that's how they learn as well. That they engage in inclusive dialogue. Nobody's wrong. There's no stupid question. My door is always open, and that's how they function basically as a performance coach. If you see this black dog in the picture here, he's really coaching the brown dog, right? Looks like he's coaching the brown dog. I don't know if he actually is. But the next picture you can see a very good example of how this guy gets energy. Where does he derive his energy from? Is really from scaffolding new ideas and other people's ideas as well. He kind of builds thrones for other people to sit on. It's a very non-aggressive, it's a very non-violent, inclusive, sorry, is that me or, okay. All right, I think somebody has to mute Pastor Marvin. It's he's there is, if you could just mute your unit, please. Thank you, because for some reason I can't mute him. Can someone mute Pastor Marvin, please? Who's the co-host? Should give co-host who's, okay, yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, because it's sort of causing an electronic interference. All right, so let's continue. So that's the paraclectic genius. And then we move on to the next one, which is the pink one, which is the metadidymic. This genius, he says, I offer the definition, and if you look over in Romans 12, it says, I offer by way of change, offer so that a change of owner is produced. I share, sometimes merely. I impart and bestow. These are all very limited ways of trying to communicate this. Let's take a little bit deeper look at this this idea. It's really learning the neck. If we can go on to the next slide, I think it'll be a little bit clearer. This one's on fracking. We'll come back to that slide. But the idea of learning the neck or organizational intelligence, these people, they manage to maximize. Think of people in the control tower at an airport, a large airport. Okay, so then you get the idea there. Nothing moves, nothing flies in and out of the airport. Nothing moves on the ground without the permission of the metadidomi. This is in order to coordinate a multiplexity of different ideas and different people and different aspects of this one sort of aerotropolis, if you like. You've got vehicles, service vehicles, you've got passengers walking around, you've got planes loading, unloading, moving, taking off, touching down. And there has to be some traffic regulation, air traffic controllers. They're called air traffic controllers. So that's really the functional genius, organizational genius. If you think of the neck, For example, the neck. If you think of the spine, the backbone, the spine that leads into the neck, and the neck that goes into the head area. It's that neck, it's that spine that carries all the nerves, that carries all of the structure and the framework for the body to even stand up. Imagine if you didn't have a backbone, then we'd be like jellyfish, right? Managing to maximize means to, I don't know if you've been to Singapore, but anyway, I don't go on to this, but Singapore is very metadidymic. It's very orderly. It's very clean. It's very system. It's very system orientated, which is a good thing. But that means that the population here and even the visitors here have to be a little bit careful to make sure that you obey the rules. That's the main idea, the main idea behind metadidymic. We're going to come across the metadidymic genius again when we study the office of the pastor's wife or the wife in a monogamous marriage, but that's later. That's in a different module. The second is the way that she interacts with the world. It's super return of investment. It's really like seeds that go into the ground in her hand. Basically, the idea that that whatever output that this person delivers must have some sort of return for investment. That's why normally they wouldn't engage in things like gambling and playing frivolous games, because it's a waste of time. These people don't like to waste anything, and therefore you'll find that they have a tremendous amount of capacity for investment and seeing returns for their investment, whether it's in precious metals or in stocks and shares and so on and so forth. If you don't have this gift, this is sort of the Warren Buffett, this is sort of the, think of the investors that are making the headlines, billionaires, and these are the people who are just Midases. Everything they touch turns to gold. Okay. And may not be such a great, it's not really, not for everybody, but there are some that just create wealth and sustainability. They're able to see opportunities for wealth creation. And okay, Marvin, thanks for that note there. If you're a pastor and you get this metadidymic anointing, okay, I guarantee you will not be a pastor anymore. Okay, this is very, very common thing. If you really are called as a pastor, you should remain as a pastor. But here's the trick: you need to be given eyes to recognize in your congregation who the metadidymies are. And I'll give you a tip, okay? Metadidymies are the really quiet ones. They don't say a word. They maybe speak 4 times in the year, if at all. But if they ever open their mouth, you better listen to what they say. This how you know it's a metadidymy. It's a total opposite of a parakleo. Parakleo's mouth is going on the whole time. But metadidymies, they look like they're not even paying attention, but they're listening to every word you say, right? Because they're judging, they're evaluating, they're assessing, they are discerning, they are gaining clarity, they are refocusing, they are reimagining, they are reframing questions in their mind. And that's how they are able to get ahead of everybody, right? I think this coming weekend, we're being visited by a member of the staff from Mega World Hotels. And she's been recently promoted to be the GM of Mega World Hotels. And she works for a boss. I think his name is Andrew Tan, something like that. He's in charge of all these condominium projects that come under the name Mega World. If you're in Philippines, you definitely heard of Mega World. Okay. Anyway, these kinds of people, they have this gift. It's of organizational genius, and their leadership style is stewarding. That means harnessing the human and the talent capital. All right. Yes, indeed. That's where I met Sister Chloe Albiso, who was the GM of Marriott Courtyard in Iloilo Business Park when we did a modality seminar there. So let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, how do these people solve problems? Internal restructuring. They restructure the problem. They reorder everything. They take apart everything, and then they put everything back together again. And they harness the human and talent capital. And they restructure. Okay, how do they learn? They sort. They compartmentalize. You have scientists who can do this. The famous classification guru, I think his name was Carl Linnaeus. He was able to, botanists, that sort of naturalists, they're able to, Darwin was like that. They were able to put together and try to derive theories. Of course, he was wrong about his evolution theory, but this is the proclivity of the metadidymic genius. And then when they get together, when all these people, kinds of people get together, it's like a business convention, right? And they start sort of trading, and of course they when they have partnerships and the match is right and the fit is right, that's how you create labels. Like, let's say if you have like 2 or 3 vineyard owners of vineyards, or property agents, owners of properties coming together, and that's how you get conglomerates, and that's how you get corporations, and so on and so forth. So there is a peer-to-peer expression that creates value in society. And then, of course, in terms of their energy source, they are able to really, they love choices, right? And so they can like, go into like online shopping, and then they'll go and they will look at every single option of, let's say, soap, or restaurants, or at a restaurant, they will look at every single every single choice in the menu. And it would take a long, long time before they can choose. But then guess what? They always order the same thing. Okay, they always order the same thing on online, whatever, but they love the choice. They love to imagine that there is a choice, but actually there's no choice. To them, they'll just go back to the familiar, go back to the tried and tested, because that's the modality of the metadidymic. Okay, so habit rules the day. It's like the Queen of England. She will eat the same thing over. She will meet the same people. She will discuss the same topics, and not very much beyond what is inside Buckingham Palace, and what, and so on and so forth. They are the rulers. They rule. They own in order to rule. Very different from the next one that we're going to look at, which is the proistemic genius. The Bible Dictionary defines proistemy like: I preside, I rule over, I give attention to, I direct, I maintain, I practice diligently. the concept is very much like a prime minister and diametrically opposite to the queen, right? So the queen, the old queen anyway, Elizabeth, before she died, she owns in order to rule. But the proistemi is the opposite of that. He will rule in order to obtain and ultimately possess and own. He will rule in order to own, whereas the queen will own in order to rule. That the two different coming together, and that's why they need each other in a constitutional monarchy. The monarch and the prime minister, Buckingham Palace and 10 Downing Street, they need to work together. That may not make any sense if you are in a Malacanang system, but in any case, maybe there are some similarities, or some countries in Asia where you have a king or a queen, like in Thailand and some of the other countries. You can just imagine a monarchy. That's more to do with metadidomi, and then a executive wing, which is more American style, like a president, or United Kingdom, they have a prime minister. Well, the prime minister is more the proistemic leader. Okay, so this picture already straight away tells you, and you can see the guy sticks out, and he's a controversial figure, and he's trying to say something, isn't he? And all these people trying to take pictures of him and try to record down what he's trying to say, because what this guy says is very important. And of course, they thought that they were going to have a revolution in Hong Kong at this time, when this Christian brother, Joshua, stood up and he started to advocate for freedom from the central control of Beijing over his country, Hong Kong. Okay. Of course, then that led to crackdowns and all sorts of things. That's not the point. But the point we're looking at is beyond just personality and politics. We're now looking at DNA. How do you lead? And if you see the scriptures, for example, 1 Corinthians 14:26, in one verse, you have all 7 modalities. And because it says, when you come together, the coming together, the person who brings everybody together, this is the proistemic genius. This is the ability to preside over an effective team, the innate ability to create followers who are dedicated to moving forward objectives to the advantage and delight of the home team. All right. So we say learning the head is different, right? So you've got 7 learnings, right? Learning the eye, the ear, learning the hand, learning the tongue, learning the neck, and then here learning the head. And then the next one we're going to be looking at is learning the heart. So these are the 7 laws of Adam. And this particular one, learning the head, is all to do with interpersonal intelligence. And so here's Nelson Mandela in prison for decades, really, and yet he can run the African National Council, the ANC, and actually win freedom from the white South African government at that time. Well, did they manage it well? It depends on who's writing the history books, but you really do need to have a metadidomic governor at that time. So it's one thing to win your freedom, but it's another thing to actually govern the resources of your land properly. Okay, but anyway, that's what's happened in history, and the way in which the proistemi would interact with the world is by expanding the core. It's through bringing this interpersonal intelligence as applied to the team, bringing the team forward. And if you think of the Tour de France, for example, usually you'll have a proistemic leader somewhere in the team. It could be the sprinter, but not necessarily. It could be somebody who's just, shepherding the team and assembling all the different parts of the fighting unit, and is able to chart a course to victory over the so many 21 stages of the Tour de France or whatever it is. This is the sort of strongman leadership understanding in terms of the strongman leadership in terms of the sort of the person, the hard-headed spearhead, the guy who breaks through, like you see in the cartoon there, and he's very conscious of time, but actually it's really not so much about time, but it's more about vision, casting the vision, and being able to point the direction, say, look, this is the way, follow me, guys. We're going to bust through. We're going to break through here. All right. And then, of course, we have some presidential characters in recent times who have really embodied this go big and go home kind of strategy. In the military, you find a lot of trigger happy generals and sort of politicians as well. In politics, you have very hard-headed sort of leading from the front type of figures, a little bit frightening, but they have their tactics, right? Bullying, and of course they have blind spots. Every single one of these genius have their blind spots, right? For example, this particular blind spot for the prosemic genius is really foul language, and you can see that in politics as well, as well as sports, as well as in so many areas where foul language is being used, in the military, in politics, and also in groundbreaking ideas as well. So that's talking about approaches to learning, peer-to-peer expressions, and energy source. How does the prosemic genius continue the mission or recharge? Well, it's by preparing for the next mission. That's the description. I hope I'm doing justice to the prosemic genius. And then, of course, we move on to the last one, which is learning the heart. And this, in the Bible dictionary, Elios, it's I pity, I have mercy on. These are just sort of limited ways of explaining this. It's far vast. It's a far more deeper current than just these few words, I pity, have mercy on. It's compassion, it's empathy, it's heartfelt, there's so many words. It's interventionist. There's an interventionist component. There's a MVP component about in sports, the most valuable player. The ability to feel for the hurting and empathize with the sufferer's pain. The driving force to rescue the fallen, rebuild boundaries broken by violence, neglect, or carelessness. All right. Any questions on that? Okay. Let's take a look at this eleemosynary gift. What is the eleemosynary? You see the dominoes? They're falling, hitting one another. Well, when the Elios, they put the hand down, they stop. They kind of create a barrier so that the effect of the disaster or of the doesn't get worse, and the bleeding stops. This we call it the domino effect is arrested. And the interaction, the way they interact with the world is through first respond. It's like a emergency responder, first response responder. And of course, this is most commonly seen in terms of, you can see this in Christians. A lot of Christians have this, but it may not be elemental. It's just out of a duty. Like, for example, in the movie Hacksaw Ridge, you saw this particular soldier going in to the war zone, picking up the wounded, and he's not carrying a rifle. And he's doing this because he wants to save more souls. All right. And of course, then you have this idea of the mentoring, minister-mentor. The idea of his leadership style is through mentoring of others. And the way that that's how they lead, by mentoring, one-on-one. Let me take you by the hand, sort of thing, and lead you through the streets of London, and I'll show you something that'll make you change your mind. So it's very one-to-one, this is how they solve problems too. It's by damage control. They're sort of the frontliners in loss protection, in firefighting, in paramedics, and so on and so forth. They will really go in and try to save the drowning, or indeed even risk their own lives, like the firefighters. They went into the burning, into the collapsing building at 9/11 in New York on that day. How do they learn? They learn on the job. That's how they learn. They don't like learning from a book, or they of course they have to learn the basics and principles, but it's by doing, and it's by on the job training that is one of the fastest ways for them to get their hands dirty, so to speak. And of course, when they all come together to save the whales, or to do some environmental cleaning, or whatever it is that they do, then you can see this association. That most associations are set up in order to rescue something, like the clan associations in 100 years ago, where they're set up to help other Kababayans to be absorbed into the new Canada or California or wherever. So you've got all these ethnic clubs that are looking out for their own people, and you kind of be a member of the club. So that idea of a country club or a social club, it's very much eleemosynary. It's helping you to find a room, helping you to get a job, helping you to get a step up into society, something like that. One person going ahead of you, sort of helping you to get on with whatever task that you've been asked to do, or mission that you have. These are the people of the man of peace. If you read in Luke chapter 10 and Matthew chapter 10, when you go into 2 by 2 and you go into a new territory, you really need to find a man or a person of peace. It could be a woman of peace. Doesn't matter. It's a person of peace. And then once you have a person of peace, they will then have the patience to grow that project until the fullness. Yeah. So the idea of removing wounds and having compassion to really tend to the garden, the secret garden of the soul, console the grieving, those who are going through pain and suffering and torment and torture and trauma. This is Elios. This is their sort of specialty area, is direct assistance to victims in trauma. Okay, so I think that is sort of where we are today. So let's take some questions now, and we'll try to disambiguate. I think we have a couple of questions already. Marvin's asking, are they introverts, metadidomies? Are they introverts or just thinkers? All right, so the two words that you used, Marvin, is that of introvert. And in modalities research, we don't use the word introvert or extrovert. The reason is because when you are in your flow, I don't know if we talked about this word flow, F-L-O-W, before, but when you are in your element, you know, when a fish is in water, it's very different from a fish that's out of water. Have you ever caught a fish and then when you took the hook out, you just let them flap around outside their element? If you don't put the fish back in the water, it's going to die. It's going to suffocate because it can live only in the water. The water is the element. It's the natural element for that creature. So you say that the fish is in its element when it is in the water, swimming in the water. And they can be very graceful when you have if you've ever seen a stingray in the water, or a shark that's gliding effortlessly in the water. But if you see the eagle, for example, the eagle, it's in the air, isn't it? When it's soaring, it's in its element, which is being able to catch the thermals and gliding and soaring and circling higher and higher and higher into the sun. That the eagle is said to be in its element when it is soaring, not flapping its wings like a crow or a chicken, but in its element. And so each of us has to find where we are in our greatest flow, where we lose a sense of time, and it's not a struggle. It's not a struggle for us to flow in that way, like an eagle in the like a ship on the sea, like a serpent on a rock. There are places and times where we will struggle, and then you will know that is not your element. You're not in your flow. And when you are not in your flow, when you are not where you ought to be or where you are created to be, then you will struggle and you will be rather introverted, or so it seems. But the moment you find your flow, where you are meant to be, where God created you for, then you find the time passes very fast. Then you find that you forget about yourself. You focus totally on what you're doing. It could be in sports. It could be in whatever place that you may be in. Okay. And then also you'll find that when you are in your flow, you become an extrovert. When you are doing what you're supposed to be doing and what you're built to do, you find that joy is overflowing. You find that there's no drag. There's so much less resistance, because that's what you can do really, really well. And by the way, that's the secret to success and satisfaction in life. You should do these things. And these are the things that you would do even if no one paid you to do. And that is really what makes life worth living. I find that introversion is when you are trying to do something with your life that you're not built to do. You're copying somebody else's genius, or you're trying to be like someone else. It's quite impossible. And you need to be yourself. Once you are yourself, then you find that you are in your element. You find that you are in your element. You're in the flow. All sense of time passes by really fast, and you become like an extrovert, something like that. Okay, so in modality training, we don't use the word extrovert or introvert. And of course, everybody is supposed to be a thinker. Okay, so I'm just responding to Marvin's question. In modalities, everyone thinks, but in different ways. What you think about and how you think. Do some people think? Everyone thinks about things differently, and the style of their thinking would be very different. The way that an artist thinks, the way that a paramedic thinks, the way that a truck driver thinks, or Air Force pilot, a fighter pilot thinks differently from a commercial airline. Commercial airline pilot thinks. So the thinking part, everybody does the thinking part, but when we are talking about the metadidymic, it's not just the thinking, but it's the structuring of the thought and the structuring of organizations that give shape to maximization and optimization of resources. So that's really what a metadidymy is famous for. Okay, in answer to Elizabeth's comment about metadidymy, a type of person with melancholic. Okay, now the word melancholic is part of a Greek system, pre-Christian system. And of course, it was made popular through the books by Tim LaHaye and so on, about the 4 temperaments. We talk about melancholic and choleric and sanguine and the other one, can't remember. And the idea here is that certain body parts like liver and kidney and so on and so forth, they would give a certain reaction and response within the human body, the anatomical system, that would make you more prone towards crying and depressed and melancholy and music that is very in the minor key, okay, living in the minor key. Whereas it's different when in the blood, where there's some sort of more hyper activity and sanguine and happy and sort of inclusive and joyful. So the Greeks saw something. They saw in a glass dimly, as Apostle Paul says. They saw something about the choleric and the anger management issues and things like outbursts and all that. They saw something, but they didn't really have a clear vision until Moses, until Peter and John and James and Jesus comes along the scene, and the New Testament. It is only when you get to the understanding of the gifts of the Father, these 7 elemental, okay? When I say elemental, I'm not talking about the hat that you wear. I'm wearing a hat, for example. This is not part of me elementally. My hat is not part of me elementally, right? But it's something that I wear. And I can wear it like this. I can wear it like that. I can wear it like this. It doesn't matter how I wear it. It's not part of me. Okay. And so when we talk about genius, or when we talk about modalities, we're not talking about the hats and the shoes that we wear, because Like, for example, lion, ox, eagle, man, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher. These are hats and shoes that we wear, but they're not us. You have to understand that's not your elemental identity. Okay? So the other word that we don't use the word is personality, because again, it gets confusing because the world has its own definition of personality, which is, as I said last week, it's very much a derivative of the work of psychologists such as Carl Jung and the other guy, Sigmund Freud. And they came out with personality theories. Again, they saw something, like, for example, Sigmund Freud. He said that, many of the traumas that men and women go through, humans is as a result of childhood mismanagement. And he talks about the Oedipus syndrome and your relationship with your mother and so on and so forth. Well, there may be some truth to that, but that's not biblical, you see. You really need to go back to the biblical truth. For example, in Psalm 139, where it says, that we were knit together from our mother's womb, but it's not according to our mother's design, but it's according to our Heavenly Father's design. So you see, Freud was not entirely wrong, but he was not entirely correct either. It's only when you come to the biblical perspective, if the word talks about it and is very, very clear, and through heuristic analysis, you can evaluate and weigh the content of the revelation and compare it with what the Bible says about it in other places. That's why we're intent in modalities to ensure that you have a full-orbed understanding of modalities, biblical archetypes. And we use Moses, and we use John, and we use Peter, and we use Paul, and we have Jesus, the words of Jesus, 7 churches, so that you can understand the fullness of human personality or human personhood. Perhaps personhood might be a better word. Okay, Marvin asks another question. Do these elements overlap? Of course they do. They overlap, but in their elemental essence, they exist separately from the other. Okay, that means just like you have a whole bunch of chemical elements, right? I'm not a chemist, but if you look at the elemental periodic table of chemical elements, right? You'll know that, for example, magnesium exists separate from sodium, and sodium exists separately from carbon, and carbon from hydrogen, and hydrogen from oxygen. But they can combine under certain circumstances, right? And everything has a chemical composition. Well, thank God, in terms of modalities, we only have a limited number of elemental truths about a human person, and these are 7-fold. As we say, in the order of Paul, it would be prophetia, diaconia, didasco, parakleo, metadidomi, proistemi, and elios. But in the order of the tabernacle, you start not with prophetia, but you start with proistemi, the gate man, right? And then as you go into the tabernacle, you get to the fire altar, and that is the atonement sacrifice of the animal, right? So it's all about the eleemosynary genius. The person, and then from there you go to the laver, which is for cleansing and the washing. So that's talking about the didactic genius, right? When you hear a sermon, it feels like you're getting washed, right? And then you go into the holy place, and then you get to the lampstand, right, which is giving light and illumination. Well, that's talking about the prophetic. And then across from the lampstand is a table of showbread. That's a paraclectic genius, the table of fresh bread, where new conversations are opened up. And then across from there is the altar of incense, different from the fire altar. This is the incense, where the burning of the fire and the exact measurement of the different elements of perfumed and fragrances and frankincense and all those kinds of things. It's very exact. It's an execution. It's the execution element. And then finally, inside the Holy of Holies is the metadidymic, the Ark of the Covenant, that contains the rod of Aaron and the manna that never went stale and the 10 Commandments. So it's talking about legality, sustainability, and what's the other one? Authority, right? So there you have this complete image again, but the order is different, right? From the entrance to the innermost altar, right? So you have the proistemi, the gate man, you have the eleemosynary genius, the going into the laver is the didactic genius, the prophetic genius, the lampstand, the table of showbread, the paraclectic genius, and then you go to the incense altar, that's the diaconic genius, and then finally inside to the Holy of Holies, that's the metadidymic genius. So you've got the same 7 colors, but they're rearranged in a different way. Okay, you will learn all of these in your okay, and I think we can more or less, we're